Who said people on a budget cannot have nice things? It's probably some rich guy. And to that rich guy out there, all I can say to you is, go buy a Bitcoin, bro.
If you want to build a gaming PC in 2021 and you're looking around and you can't find a whole lot of good options, especially if you remember building a PC, say, a year or 2 years ago when prices were a little bit more normal. Well, today I'm going to have some options for you guys to take you through some of those twists and turns where you can still get some reasonable value. And make no mistake about it, these things right here, the graphics cards, at the moment, I would consider them a rip-off worldwide in that we've got the new graphics cards. They're not coming in anywhere near MSRP in a lot of countries. And then we've got cards like this, the RX 470 4GB, being overpriced at least to what it was a year or 2 years ago on the used market. Now, the funny thing is about this RX 470 right here, this came out in 2016. I remember getting my hands on one of these, and it was at the time considered a mid-range card. And we fast forward now, the mid-range, where at least where this card came out on, that mid-range is now moving towards a higher upper price point of $399 in the case of a 3060 Ti, or the recent released RTX 3060, which is coming in at around $330 MSRP. But again, those MSRPs just aren't there. These cards are coming in at that price, but they're not coming in at that price from the retailers. So what we're left with is to fend for ourselves and try and find the best deals we can to put together a gaming PC in these weird times. Though in terms of prices and talking about what is overpriced right now, it really does come down to the graphics card. And we've made a complete video, well, actually 2 videos, talking about this whole situation. I'll link them up above. But let's get on to some of the other components here, and that is we're going with a X99, except the motherboard is brand new. And these are coming in around $80, though you can get a combo right now with a 6-core 12-threaded X99 Xeon. And the good thing about these Xeons is they do have some of those latest instruction sets, so they'll be able to play all modern titles absolutely fine. And the even better thing about this CPU, as well as the motherboard, is that you can get this with RAM as well, 16 gigabytes of RAM for $145. Now, I'm not going to lead you guys astray. This CPU, it's not going to perform as well as the latest Ryzen 5600X 6-core 12-threaded CPU, but one thing it is going to do the best at is pretty much giving some of the best price performance out there on the market, at least in these weird times where everyone either wants a new Ryzen CPU or they want a new i7. And so that leaves the demand for something like a Xeon here actually quite low, and with that, it means low prices, where the CPU itself can be picked up for roughly $20 shipped, and that's worldwide. And the better thing about that is that we can couple it with some cheap memory and still get 16 gigabytes on a budget. Though going through some of the rest of the components that we're going to need to complete this gaming PC, we've got right here a case that I picked up locally. It's actually from 2005, but I got it for $10. And it's got actually quite a few fans packed inside, where the side panel itself also has a 20 centimeter fan. Then for the power supply, we're going with a MWE 450 watt. And you might think, oh, it's only 450 watts, Brian. I want a 1000 watt power supply. And you don't need that. We're only using an RX 470. And even if we end up upgrading to a mid-range graphics card in the future, like an RTX 3060, when they become more affordable, a 450 watt power supply is going to do the job absolutely fine. Then the last component of today's build, we cannot forget about storage. So we're going with a 480 gigabyte SSD. The reason being is that all over the world, you can get SSDs for pretty solid prices, especially like this, a crucial one right here. I picked this up for locally just under $50 US. So if you want to get one of these from AliExpress, for example, shipped worldwide, they'll come in at similar prices. Now, if you are finding yourself struggling for storage, you may want to get a 1 terabyte SSD, especially since in a lot of areas in the world, hard drives are actually pretty overpriced, especially for 1 and 2 terabyte solutions. I do suggest if you want to get, say, a backup drive, you can take a look at the used market and see what that has to offer in terms of drives out there for sale. I commonly pick up a lot of 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte hard drives for very good prices. And when I check the health of those drives, or I ask for someone to give me a report on those drives, they all pass with flying colors. and the health indicators say that those drives have quite a bit of life left in them. Though with all the parts and the explanations of those parts done, I'll put the build tally up here for you guys on the screen, where the most hardest part to get, I guess, especially if you're in a rural area, is going to be the case. I do suggest with the case looking locally, either from a computer shop or from a used deal, where shipping a case international, I've done this in the past and I've just had absolutely no luck, to the point where I actually got scammed by one of the sellers when I was trying to buy a case worldwide. Though, let's take you guys through a quick walkabout and build this thing up, because it's super easy to build, especially when we don't have any extra hard drives. Oh, and one more thing, we're gonna need a Windows 10 key, where today's video sponsor, SCD Keys, can bring you one of those for a very good price. And this is a single end user license, and you use the coupon code BFTYC, you can get yourself a big, juicy discount. I'll put the links in the description below. Let's get on with it. So everything now seems to be working absolutely fine. We're going to install Windows, but one thing you may want to do if you're going with this exact combo here is that you can update the BIOS by flashing a new BIOS on these motherboards, and then that will unlock the turbo multipliers on the Xeons, bringing that $20 CPU in with even more value than what you may be used to. So that'll push all cores of those 6 cores, 12 threads at over 3 gigahertz with this mod, which means in games, we're gonna get better FPS, especially if those games are single thread dependent. I'll put a link in the description below if you wanna know more about this process. Let's start getting some games installed and seeing how this thing performs in a variety of titles. And after playing those titles on this budget PC, I was pretty impressed with what it was doing. I mean, we loaded up Battlefield 5 and the FPS was smooth. We're getting over 60 FPS at 1080p, just high settings preset. So if you want to get even more FPS out of this rig, then you can drop the settings down to medium or low, and you'll be having a smoother experience even in a 64-man multiplayer matchup. Though, what about those people on Fortnite? And this is the thing, I know there's a lot of, I'd say Fortnite's like half and half. I'd say half of you guys just don't like talking about it, you skip the chase, but then the other half love it. Like, people watch the Fortnite videos, they want to know how this thing performs in Fortnite. And for me personally, I want to know how it performs in Fortnite, because when I go to resell the PC, people pretty much ask that sole question. Even going into 2021, people ask, can it play Fortnite? Now, I can comfortably tell them, look, this thing's gonna get on average over 150 FPS on competitive settings at 1080p 100% screen res. And so they're gonna be looking for that, because they might wanna go out and get a 144 hertz monitor and then have a pretty good competitive gaming setup for Fortnite on a budget. So ultimately, those two games, Battlefield 5 and also Fortnite, they were spitting out some very impressive numbers, and the 1% lows and 0.1% lows were decent. They weren't the best I've seen, but at the same time, I was still very comfortable getting to a good level on this game and playing comfortably in terms of competitiveness with this setup. Of course, if you wanted to go for Max Pro, then you're probably going to be already getting some sponsors in and be able to afford a better setup than the one we've got here. But this PC, definitely a good gateway into the level of competitive pro playing if that's what you're looking to do with such a setup. And then the last title we tested was F1 2020, and what I saw here was something that was pretty decent in terms of its FPS. 1080p high settings preset, and we're getting over 100 FPS on average. So our RX 474 gigabyte, not to be underestimated in 2020, it can still play games. And I mean, in these climates and in these challenging conditions that's going on around the world, especially if you're the person who wants to buy a graphics card or wants to get into PC gaming, in these kinds of conditions, this is something that's definitely going to give you a very enjoyable experience. And I mean, for me personally, I've played on all different types of monitors, all different types of setups, and a 24-inch 1080p monitor coupled with a PC like this is definitely going to give you an enjoyable experience. If you feel like you want to step it up to a 1440p setup or even a 4K OLED setup, sure, you'll be getting a better gaming experience, but the price, at least versus the FPS and also the experience, is definitely not going to be giving you the value that something like this little budget setup right here, coupled with a 1080p 144Hz monitor, for example, is going to give you. And another big note to make at this point in time is that 144Hz monitors, they've also come down in price a lot, to the point where you can even get 144Hz IPS monitors for very good prices. So overall, this PC that we built here, in terms of the specs and what it can do, I was very impressed. Now, if you want to go out and get a different case, different power supply, or a different cooler or something like that, then be my guest, go do that. And I highly recommend you go always look for the best deals and value that you can get. And so this case though, even something from 2005, it had this 20 centimeter side fan there that wasn't actually that noisy, and it was still keeping the graphics card under 75 degrees, and this is in the middle of summer. You gotta understand, I'm in summer here in Australia. Most of you guys are in winter. Things are upside down here, so the weather is also upside down here in the beautiful land of Aussie. And so that means that the temperatures are also going to be a lot hotter than they usually would. So the max that this was getting to, I think I saw 73 degrees in Fortnite. And then after that, the other games were actually a little bit lower. And then going into different seasons, the temperatures are going to be even lower yet again. Though the final thing to talk about in today's video is the E5 2620V3. 6 cores, 12 threads, still relevant for gaming, going up to 3.2 gigahertz on all those 6 cores, 12 threads. I was actually very impressed for a $20 CPU that this thing can pretty much max that RX 470 at 1080p at 100% all the time. Though personally, I would like to take this CPU a bit higher and say couple it with maybe an RTX 2060 or an RTX 2070 or a 5700 XT and see if it can handle that at either 1080p or 1440p. Because I think going into this year, looking at getting the budget down on everything else but the GPU and then just going hard on the GPU is a good option, of course, for getting the best gaming experience if you're staying indoors a lot more than you otherwise would. So I'm gonna be looking into that for you guys. But another thing is too, the final thing with this build is that you've got an upgrade path, believe it or not. So we saw here today that we used 2 sticks of DDR4 memory. We can add in another 2 sticks, and that'll also give us quad channel memory if we want to. And we can also put in a 12 core, 24 threaded E5 2678 V3. And this will also clock pretty much the same speeds in games, but of course you'll get double the cores, double the threads. And as we've seen with a lot of games going over to DX12, they are utilizing a lot more cores and a lot more threads, meaning we don't need the higher clock speeds as much as we used to. And we can definitely get more value out of CPUs that are clocked a little bit lower. Though the good thing that comes out of it with these Xeons is that when you're gaming and then when you're doing a lot of other stuff, is that since they're clocked a little bit lower than your traditional i7s and new Ryzens that are coming out, they also use a bit less power. And even though they're pretty much like 6 years old, or they were manufactured around 6 years ago, they still give out very good performance per watt because they're clocked at a really good efficiency sweet spot when they were used and purposed in servers. But now they're being repurposed and essentially unlocked on the turbo side for gaming, they're giving out even better results than I would expect personally. And with all that aside, I hope you guys enjoyed today's budget build. If you did, then be sure to hit that like button for us. Also, let us know in the comments section below, what was your favorite piece of today's build? Would you change anything if you had the options? Love reading your thoughts and opinions as always. And I know a lot of you guys out there will be like, well, try and get yourself a Ryzen. Definitely take a look at that if you can afford a Ryzen 5 2600, for example, but they will set you around about $100 off AliExpress. And of course, if you can find something like that on the used market, a combo, for instance, in my used parts hunts, I've found some really good combos for around about the 150 US price point with 16 gigabytes of DDR4, B450 and Ryzen 5 2600 and a cooler. If you can get something like that locally, it's always a really good option too. And being B450, you've got a really good upgrade path too. So hopefully this video has helped you in getting into PC gaming. Even though it's 2021 and things are all messed up in the market, hopefully this video serves as a good guide to help you get some really good price performance. Though, with that aside, we do have the question of the day here. So do let us know in the comments though. Are you digging this new RGB in the background? But also, do you want to keep seeing the question of the day? As I love just doing this content for you guys. In 2021, I'm going to be giving you guys more of a focus on what you want to see, especially during the live stream last year. You guys gave us ideas, and I'm going to be focusing on that the more we go into the content going through this year. But this question of the day comes from a crypto girl, and they ask, instead of people hating miners buying GPUs, which is stupid since everyone is allowed to buy GPUs for whatever reasons, you should ask yourself, why do people do that? Why is Ethereum so interesting that they would risk new highly priced GPUs? It is not only short-term money, I can tell you that. Thank me in some years if you started learning more about Ethereum today. And this is a question that I feel like, because I've done crypto mining in the past, I went into it and I got to learn everything about it, especially in terms of the mining side and how it all works. And the reason why I'm against GPU mining in particular is that it's quite simply inefficient versus FPGA and also especially ASIC. These two technologies are far more efficient in terms of what they can pull in terms of hash rates and verifying the network versus traditional GPU mining. And so since we're, I guess, in a world, wouldn't we want to be more efficient? Wouldn't we want ASICs mining these cryptocurrencies and essentially making the network more efficient? And that's my biggest gripe with it, because I know that personally, and the argument against that doesn't make any sense. Where people are saying, okay, crypto miners are buying the GPUs and the GPU mining should be ASIC resistant because it gives the smaller guy a chance to get into cryptocurrency. And what we're seeing, in my opinion, is a much worse effect where corporations, instead of buying ASIC miners, are now buying up GPUs that originally just are made for gaming and they're not as efficient for things like crypto mining. They're buying all these up and they're just mining the crypto and making money. And then the worst thing about that is they've got the gamers as fallback. So that's why I believe the whole industry is sort of targeted towards GPU mining, because it's a much safer investment if you're a crypto miner buying a GPU than you're a crypto miner buying an ASIC miner. If you guys have seen the prices of ASIC miners, once they become not as good as the latest generation, they're pretty much worthless. No one really wants them. They want the latest ASIC miners because they're the most efficient and they're the best in slot, sort of thing, as opposed to the GPUs. It doesn't matter what GPU you mine on, especially in 2021. If you're mining on a GPU, like say for instance you buy a 3060 Ti and then you get that 3060 Ti on the mining bench and then crypto goes bust, you've still got a 3060 Ti that you can sell for pretty much close to what you paid for it. So the risk of losing money if you use a traditional graphics card for mining versus say an ASIC miner, there's a lot more incentive to mine on a graphics card. And so that is my biggest thing and why I'm against crypto mining on GPUs. And I feel like in this world, if you go for nothing but pure greed, then that's going to have a butterfly effect and that'll have consequences. And you will see that start flowing through where people start becoming very selfish, and you're seeing, I believe that you're already seeing that flowing through cryptocurrencies. And so hopefully that answers that question. Of course, you're right about it being a free market and you can buy and sell whatever you like. And of course, price is going to be dictating the current situation of supply and demand, especially changes in prices of, say, graphics cards this year versus last year. I'm not against a free market. I'm just against the whole ASIC resistant argument that gives the average guy a chance to get into crypto when it really doesn't. It's more just corporations now buying up GPUs instead of ASIC miners and using those with a fallback. And that's to sell them to the gamers if crypto goes bust. But that said, in the process, them taking all the graphics cards out of the market is raising prices astronomically, and it's affecting people, especially in a situation like COVID, where you can't just go outside. And I made a joke about this in 2018. I was like, guys, just go outside. That was the solution. And that really isn't an option, unfortunately, for a lot of people in 2021, as it otherwise would be back in 2018. Anyway, guys, that's it for now. I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. If you've stayed this far and you're enjoying that Tech Yes content and you're not yet subbed and you want to see the content as soon as it drops, be sure to hit that sub button, ring that bell, and I'll catch you guys in another one very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.